Hi, I'm David Essel, and I'm very excited to share with you our program, Slow Down to Awaken Your Own Spiritual Path. The following presentation was recorded live at the First Unity Church in St. Petersburg, Florida. The Reverend Temple Hayes, a very good friend of mine and someone who I have immense respect for, invited me to speak several times to her congregation during their Sunday services. After this presentation, I'll take you on a step-by-step journey that will offer us all a greater opportunity to connect with our own personal spiritual path more deeply on a daily basis.
Wow! Wow! Is that awesome? Yes. Oh, just fantastic. After the first session today, this guy came up to me and he said, they said you were going to talk on slow down, and I'm looking at this guy and he's jacked through the roof. And he goes, and I was really going to question your message today because you were just out there, and then you said, we often teach what we most need to learn ourselves. And he said, okay, then you won me over after you said that, because I will tell you, that is such a beautiful rendition. That was such a beautiful song, and it goes hand in hand with my whole concept of life of slowing down, which I do need. I think that's why God gave me the book and gives me this opportunity to speak, because I need it as much as anyone in this room. So I'm going to slow down for a second and tell you how I got here. Because it's a unique path, isn't it? If we're open to the path of God, it is so unique. There's not a thing, I promise you, there's not a thing I've ever planned in my life to get here. Never. All the school I did had nothing to do with writing books, doing radio shows, television shows, public speaking. It had not a thing. I'm glad I didn't try to plan it. Because what do they say when God laughs at plans? You want to see him laugh? Make a plan. Go right ahead, set your little 5, 10, 15-year goals out there, and he'll just laugh along with you. But how did I get here? 4 years ago, I went to a Barnes & Noble bookstore in Tampa to do a reading for my kids' book, The Real Life Adventures of Catherine Cat Calloway I. And I come walking in, and usually Barnes & Noble does a great job. I love them as a company. They do a great job, and we have tons of little kids sitting around in little chairs. And I come into this Barnes & Noble in Tampa, and the little chairs are there, and they're all empty, except for one big little kid, Patty Rondolino. She's the only one there in a tiny little chair waiting for me. Over here, I'm your audience. Patty and I had an hour and a half to talk, and since then we've had a most beautiful path, and that's how I'm even standing here today. So namaste. Thank you so much for your love. Very magical woman. Very magical. I'm getting goosebumps. Chills. God bumps, right? Then, through Patty, I met Reverend Temple. And Reverend Temple and I have done some work together that will be released in the near future. That's a really exciting project. It's incredible. And actually this afternoon I'll be telling you part of that path that will involve her. So thank you for trusting in me, Reverend Temple. Namaste. And Barbara? Namaste. So last night I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what am I going to talk about? Because it's almost like being a kid in a candy store. When you have a chance to talk about, spirituality and God and all the kind of stuff that you really love, it's like anyone that has a passion about anything in life. If someone says, well, just go do your passion, you go, I don't know what I want to start and talk about. I have so many different things. So I decided that what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down. And I love pro basketball, so I'm going to turn the TV on. I'm in my room, I'm flipping through channels, and I couldn't find the games. And I'm flipping. All of a sudden I hit this preacher. And this preacher is very enthusiastic, and the preacher is going, and then David went through 17 years of muck for him to reach his calling, to be the king of Israel. And I'm sitting there going, wow, David had to really slow down. Didn't he? Can you imagine going through, and maybe you have, 17, a lot of us when we hit 17 days and our path doesn't open, we throw it to the side and give up, right? 17 years. He knew he had a calling. He knew it was going to be huge. And God, along the way, is saying, you got to slow down, man. It's coming, but you got to slow down. So I'm listening to this preacher get really enthusiastic, and I'm going, he's talking about slowing down. He's talking about slowing down. So then he gets done talking about David, and I said, okay, that's enough of that. I'm flipping around. I know my game's here somewhere. Flipping for the game, and all of a sudden, Larry King comes on with Deepak Chopra. How many people saw that last night? Oh, we did? Oh, yeah, a couple of us did. On Buddhism, right? His new book on Buddhism, and, it's about slowing down, right? It's about slowing down and understanding that all of our troubles, all of our worries are based on our desire for life to be something different than it is at this very moment. Right? Basic tenet teachings. I'm going, wow, this is great. This is opening up the door for me. And then I remembered I was here with Michelle O'Donnell when she did an all-day workshop or an all-afternoon workshop a couple months ago. And she opened me up to one of the most amazing books, and there's a mantra I'm going to give you today. There's a theory to this presentation. And it came out of one of the books that she recommended by Joel Goldsmith called Practicing the Presence, and it's an amazing book. It's a great book. And it's perfect for slowing down, because this is what I got out of reading the whole book. My only desire is to experience God and share God every moment I am alive. You talk about slowing down, right? Just think if that was our mantra. My only desire is to experience God and to share God every moment I am alive. If that is where we are, and I think a lot of us are there at a place saying, I would really love to find more peace. How can we find more peace other than sharing God and experiencing God? I don't know if there's a greater place to find peace, is there? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And now, how did I get here besides Patty and Reverend Temple? Well, I started out, I was very young when I was born. And I was born into a Roman Catholic family. And from 6 months, and I promise you this is true, from 6 months to 13, I rebelled about not going to church and not praying and not, please don't, we have to say grace again after dinner, right, or before dinner. Grace, grace, grace. So I grew up in this environment where I couldn't wait to not be in it. Because between 6 months and 13, we are so wise. We really do know what's good for us, And I was laughing earlier because at 13, I got big enough and strong enough to be able to resist the pulls and the everything else's that got me into the car to go to church. Everything, and I said this earlier, and this is the truth. I am so grateful and thankful that tasers were not around. Because my parents, lovingly, would have tasered my little butt, wrapped me into a blanket, put me in the car to bring me into Mass at 13 to 18, because tasers would have worked for those years, for sure. So I resisted, and I got out of going. I got out of going because I was tall enough and smart enough, I'm sure. And I went on a path that was anti-everything. I didn't need any of this stuff. And then I tripped and stumbled into meditation. And then I tripped and stumbled into Buddhism. And then, I don't know if this has happened to anyone here, but all of a sudden, Buddhism brought me back to the teachings of my parents in the strangest ways. Isn't that wild? I mean, Buddhism brought me back to the teachings of my parents, and all of a sudden now I'm going, wow, I can have a little bit of everything. That there isn't a way, there's a way that will work for me, and for the way that works for me, it's really truly believing in a lot of different paths that got me here today. So what would it look like if you wrote down, because I truly believe in the power of writing, and I think that anything we keep in our head just stays in our head. I really know that. And working for 15 years now as a life and business coach, I know that if people don't write down what they want to see change, it will never change. I promise. So if you say, geez, I really like what Joel Goldsmith said, that David was talking about, is that I want to wake up with my only desire is to experience and to share God every moment I'm alive. If we don't write down that that's the intention and then a path to follow it, I guarantee you whatever sounds like a great idea in 72 hours will be out of your mind. It's like, have you ever gone to a motivational lecture, and at the end you walk out of there, you're all jazzed and all excited and everything, and then 7 days later there isn't a thing that's changed. Right? Or have you ever woken up ready to let go of an addiction, and this is the day that it's going to happen? 24 hours later, you're back into it. All right, 48 if you're really good. If we don't write things down and have a plan, so I'm going to ask you, if you walk out of here with one thing, I'm going to ask you to walk out, grab a piece of paper and a pen, and write down, how is this intention going to manifest in your life? You're way ahead of me. how, if you really believe what I believe to be true, is that the path to peace is slowing down and asking ourselves, how can I create a life where my true desire is to experience God and to share God every moment I am alive? If you can write a little path of what that means to you, you will start to rocket to this place of slowing down and peace. My dad at 71 shocked everyone and became an altar boy. Can you imagine that? He's an amazing man. I mean, after I think I was probably 25, I really did see the wisdom in his teachings. I think up till 25, I did not see any value in much of what he said. And now years later, I say, holy cow, what a role model. So it's 70, right? He's like 79, 80. Sorry, Dad. He's 79 or 80, I forget. But he decided to become an altar boy because he always used to say to me, you know what, David, I really, truly am trying to practice the path of God. And you may not agree with me. And we had this discussion a lot when I was younger. And you may not agree with me, but I really think this is the path to God, you know? And over the years, he softened so much that he actually welcomed my introduction of Buddhism and welcomed introduction of Hinduism. And he welcomed me. He would sit and talk, which, I mean, he's amazing. He's an amazing man. And then in his 70s, he becomes an altar boy, which means he had to shed his ego, stand next to Timothy, who was 10. Who was his teacher. Timothy would sit there and elbow him and say, Mr. Essel, this is not the time to genuflect. He learned everything from this little Timothy. So you can imagine my dad. Now, he's an accountant. And he would get physically ill 3 times a year before having to present to 3 people in his office at Syracuse University the quarterly reports. He'd get physically ill. So just imagine this, 70 plus, Timothy's elbowing him, telling him he's not doing things right. First day on the job as an altar boy, and the priest says this, my dad walks over, he goes, you know, I'm really sorry, Ed, but I've got to go back into the sanctuary to get something I forgot. Could you read out of the Bible today for us? My dad is going, and this is a true story. My dad said, you know what I did? He said, I thought back to what you told me about your work as a public speaker. He said, I took a big breath. I told myself to calm down. And as I stood at the lectern, I saw myself speaking without fear. And he said, so then I picked up this book, and he said, I made my way through it. He said, I kept thinking, I'm practicing the presence. I'm practicing the presence. The second day, the third day of being an altar boy, he's asked and I think the priest might have been doing this on purpose. 3 days in a row, my dad had to go and read in front of an audience, and he felt ill. But he made it through. And now you can't get him off the altar. You cannot. He will stay up there for as long as you let him and a little bit longer. At 79, he's hilarious to hear these stories with. How can we practice the presence? How can we experience God and share God more in everything that we do? I will tell you this. I'm going to give you a hint. Here's the hint on how to practice and experience God and to share God more every day, and that is this. It probably has to do with someone that you may not be getting along with, or a type of person that you don't normally hang out with. That's where the presence is going to be, and that's our greatest teacher. So who might that be? Well, you probably know well, not in this group, but in other groups, there's people that still have resentments and stuff. I know, because Reverend Temple told me it doesn't happen here, but in other places it still does, and that's probably the place to start. I was introduced to this whole thing a number of years ago, a very interesting experience. I lived in Sarasota, Florida. Now I live down in Fort Myers, but I was living in Sarasota, and I was going for a run, and during runs, I often pray. Lots of gratitude, I'll go out, runs of gratitude. Oh, that tomato on that sandwich was so good. Seriously, the lowest common denominator, right? Because then as we work our way up and we thank someone for a phone call that we hadn't heard from, or someone that called, as a matter of fact, recently I had someone that called me that I had dated like 20 years ago that called me to ask for forgiveness. She was going through a 12-step program, and part of it was doing resentments, and part of it was doing releasing, and she called me out of the blue, and I remember running and just thanking God for that amazing phone call, for the strength that she had, to say that I did something that you didn't know about, and I feel really bad, and I want you to know. So when I run, I think of all these magnificent things happening. I run and thank my ability to run, right? And my ability, so I'm coming over this bridge, And I'm seeing this guy on the side of the road, and he's like taking a step out and a step back and out and back. And there's 4 lanes of traffic going crazy. And then it looks like he's going to make a run for it, and then he comes back, and then he finally goes. And he gets into the second lane and hit head on. And it looked like a dummy flying in. It did not look human. It did not look real. 40 plus feet in the air, knocked across 3 complete lanes of traffic. And everything goes slow motion at this point. If you've ever experienced something like this, it's really bizarre, but everything goes through really slow motion. And then I see his body hit the ground, and there's the road, then there's that cement curb, and then there's a grass strip, and then a sidewalk. And I see his head pound on the grass strip, and I'm just thinking, that is just like so close to his head just smashing into that cement curb. So I sprinted down, not having any clue of what I was going to do, other than I had to be there. And I get down on the ground next to this guy, and he is screaming in pain. We find out later, hips shattered, legs shattered, everything just shattered, And the very first thing I did, and I don't have any training in any of this stuff, and I did some things wrong, but God was with me, so nothing happened. Thank you. I grab his hand, and I notice his hands probably hadn't been washed in months. They were calloused and just full of dirt, His shoes were knocked off from the impact, and his feet were extremely dirty, and toenails haven't been cut in months, and just mangled. And he's screaming and screaming in pain, and this is not of me. I know this. I do know it is of my prayers, but I also know it is not of me. Is that all I kept saying was, "You are not alone. We are here. You are not alone. We are here." So he's screaming and screaming, and I find his name. His name is Joe. And I start saying, "Joe, you're not alone. We are here." The ambulance gets the wrong address. They were diverted away. I literally was there for 10 minutes when it's usually a 2.5-minute response call. And I'm saying it, and as I'm talking, he starts to calm down. At first, my thought was shock. Maybe he's going into shock. Am I going to lose him? But he was conscious, so we're talking. "You are not alone, Joe." And as I looked him over, he looked to be an 80 easily. He was 60. He had been living on the streets forever. And I was looking at the face of God. I was so blessed to be asked or chosen to be there. Unknowingly to practice the presence of experiencing God and sharing God. I was so blessed. It was not Joe. I was blessed. I never will forget Joe. Ever. He put a face on a faceless part of our humanity that can only be experienced when we slow down. Went to visit Joe in the hospital, multiple surgeries. Went to visit Joe in the rehabilitation center. Find out that Joe was a rock and roll king years ago, a major drummer in a big band, and he had stories that would blow your mind. And I sat in and this was so cute. I had this big, heavy Avia running sweatshirt, because it was freezing out. So I had taken it off, not knowingly. Of course, the medics afterwards say you should never touch a guy's head. I picked up his head, put my sweater underneath his head so he was cushioned, And they're telling me all these things I did that I shouldn't have done, but I was guided, so I was fine, But this is so cute. So I go to the rehabilitation center, and they have pictures, what they call them mug shots, outside of the door of all the patients, and the patients share like 4 patients to a room, and there's Joe with a big toothless smile with my Avia sweatshirt on. I loved it. And every time I come over to see him, I'd wheel him out in his wheelchair, and he'd go, "Look there's your shirt, I love it. It's my favorite sweatshirt." And I picked up Joe's stuff. He had a duffel bag. That's all he had. That was his life. A duffel bag. Had a couple pictures in it of his kids, and that was it. See, I think that's where we find God. in the practicing of the presence and the sharing of God in unexpected places. I really, truly believe that is true. But we have to be looking. It's like we have to write and think about how we want to shift for the shift to occur, or it's not going to happen, because we're very comfortable in life. And growth is always outside of the comfort zone. Always, always, always. I had a client in Chicago, Dophy Piper, who was a physician who died a couple years ago at like 36 of brain cancer. And I worked with him prior to his experience with cancer, and he was an amazing physician, lived in Chicago, right? And so when he called me to do this work, he didn't know, and I didn't know, that we were going to be doing all spiritual work. And in about 2 sessions, it became very evident. I didn't need to help him with his business plans. I didn't need to help him with his relationship. I really needed to just help him with his path to God. And so one of the things he said, he would come back from runs. He lived in downtown Chicago, and he'd come back from runs, and he'd go, you know, David, what really frustrates me is all the homeless people all over the place. And I go, Dophy, that's where our path's going, buddy. Because that's where you want to go on a deeper spiritual path. You know how we ask that, and all of a sudden it's presented? Like, if you want to go to a deeper spiritual path, you're probably going to get in a traffic jam today, right? If you say to God, you know, I really want to go on a deeper spiritual path, or your kid's going to call you with something really, really ridiculous, or your partner's going to do something like just off the wall because you've asked for it. Because you've asked for practice. So Dophy ends up deciding that he's going to slowly start to connect with the homeless people on his runs. So first it was just acknowledging that they were human beings. And that might sound like simple, but it's really true, right? First we have to acknowledge that they're human beings. Then secondly, we have to actually look for contact. You know, we have to look into their eyes, because that's where the human connection is. Well, this goes on for, it seems like forever, and the last day I had a session with him, he calls me up and he goes, you're not going to believe this. I go, what? He goes, on my last run today, the group of homeless people that I couldn't stand months ago were applauding my run as I went by. Isn't that awesome? My only desire is to experience and share God every moment I am alive. That is getting slowed down, I think, to one of the greatest and the lowest levels possible. How is it that you want that to happen in your life? What is it that you're looking for? I want to tell you a final story about slowing down. For 9 years, I hosted a nationally syndicated radio talk show. And I had a studio in Florida. And my producer was in Washington, D.C. And I had a headset, obviously. And on one ear would be the caller. You know, this is Sue from Seattle and asking a question, blah, blah, blah. And then on the other side would be my producer saying, okay, David, next up is Jim from Baltimore. So we go back and forth, and we had this just a great run, just a phenomenal. Actually, we were on WQYK here in St. Pete, I think St. Pete it is, when it was talk years ago. From 91, we were on QYK from 91 to 99 or something like that. So we were in this area doing talk, and sometimes it was late night. We started for the first 5 years, it was late night, and then after that we moved it to afternoons on weekends. So anyway, all of a sudden my producer's freaking out. He goes, you're not going to believe who's standing outside the window looking in. And of course I can't say who, because I'm answering, you know, Sue from Seattle. He's going, Meatloaf! Meatloaf, the singer! Go to break right away. Meatloaf is watching me through the window, you know, so we go to break. Okay, we got to go to break. We go to break, and he's freaking out on the phone with me. He's absolutely freaking out, going on the headset. We got to get Meatloaf in. I said, well, go talk to him. So he goes out, and he says, you know, Mr. Meat, we, the host of the show, David, would love to have you on as a guest. And Meat is going, I don't even know who this guy is. I've never even heard his show, but all I do is listen to motivational stuff when I'm not doing my music. I just love motivational stuff. I would love to be on the show, and his manager's going, come on, Meat, we've got a big gig tomorrow. You need your rest, you know, and he's trying to pull him away. And Meatloaf goes, no, and he comes in, he goes, tell the host I'll give him 5 minutes. And I'm going, wow, 5 minutes. What am I going to do with 5 minutes? This is Meatloaf. You know, I mean, this is Love by the Dashboard Lights, right? Remember that song? Oh, come on, are you too young? This is Meatloaf. So I said, I'm thinking during the break, I got to just ask him one question and let him go. I don't care, I need to be quiet. So I said, Mr. Meatloaf, has there ever been an experience in your musical career or in your life that's radically changed your approach to living? Is there just one? Because we just have a few minutes. I know you need to go. And he went into the story. Said a number of years ago, he was in Canada at a record store signing autographs, and they were supposed to be there for a couple hours in the afternoon. And he said the line was going around and around the store. So he's signing and signing and signing, and his manager's going, you have 30 minutes left, and Meatloaf goes, where's the line? He goes, well, it goes out for forever, but don't worry, we've got to leave. And Meatloaf goes, I got a feeling we got to stay today. So we're supposed to leave at 4, 4:30 comes 5, 5:30 comes 6. Meatloaf is still there, and finally, he sees the end of the line, and the manager's flipping out, going, we should have been out of here a couple hours ago, you got a huge gig tonight, and Meatloaf goes, no. 4 people in from the end of the line is a couple, and the guy's holding his girlfriend to his chest, and she is bawling hysterically, absolutely crying. And Meatloaf said you could see it's been like that for hours, that she's been crying. So finally he knows that he's there for a reason, that he was called and asked to stay this late for a specific reason. And this couple comes up, and the guy says, my girlfriend will not talk to you, cannot talk to you, maybe never will talk to you, but I have to share this story with you. A very short time ago, right down the street in the hotel, she checked in one afternoon, went up, turned the radio on in the room as loud as it could go, put her purse down on the bed, pulled out a gun, and put it in her mouth. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, your song, Heaven Can Wait, came on the airwaves. She pulled the gun out, called for help, and is standing in front of you today because of your work. And we don't know if you realize how you've been touched by the hand of God, but we are here to tell you have. And for all the people that you'll never talk to and you'll never hear this story from, we hope you'll take this to heart. And Meatloaf said that he was crying, they were crying. It was a total mess. It was an absolute mess. And he said that moment on totally changed his life as he realized the gift of God that he had been given. And now one of his messages is to reiterate that gift that each and every person has within inside themselves, that they have to find the beauty of God, the presence of God, the everlasting love of God. He said, I was never the same after that. I was so much better, so much kinder. So I want to ask you, as you leave here today, to think about the power, the shift that can happen when we decide to create the intention that our only desire is to experience and to share God every moment we are alive. Namaste. Thank you.
David, we look forward to hearing more from David today at 1:30, so enjoy the Unity Cafe and then the workshop.
Creating this type of a life really comes down to the 3 key steps I talk about in Slow Down, our book, The Fastest Way to Get Everything You Want. We're going to break this down into first looking at our intention, secondly, the gratitude that we have for what it is that we're experiencing on a daily basis, and then third, the action steps. So let's look at the first one, our intention. If you want to write this down with me, it might help you to become more clear and centered on what we're trying to do. Our first intention is my only desire is to experience God every moment I am alive. Go ahead and write that down. My only desire is to experience God every moment I am alive. So we have the intention. Now the second thing we need to do is to look at, through the written word, writing the gratitude of how this has happened recently. As I said during the live presentation, experience God doesn't have to just happen in a church. And really, we shouldn't just look at it there. It can happen, as a matter of fact, here are some of the things that I've written down in the past. An amazing meal that I've had. We can thank God with gratitude for a great meal. for the song of a wonderful bird out of our window. Maybe if you have a pet, you can see God in the eyes of your pet. Having gratitude for a pet, flowers, a stream, a tree outside your window. Even the call from a friend you can have gratitude for. Maybe someone called you at the moment you needed to be lifted up. That person may not have even known that you needed that kind of a boost, and they did it. See, these are all the ways that we can have gratitude in this world right now. And from my perspective, it's kind of like God's hand in every area of our life. We might find an answer to a prayer. Maybe there's something you've been praying for, and all of a sudden it appears. It's magical. You can look and have gratitude from God in the eyes of your lover or a best friend, or maybe it's a kiss from your lover that you say that that's what you needed at that moment, and it did center you. Have you experienced God in other ways recently? I'd like for you to take a moment and to write it down. Think about this and write it down. Through our website, talkdavid.com, you can actually pick up our Blessings of the Day sheet, and that's a way to have gratitude and to stay more closely attuned to how God is working and even intervening in your life. The more gratitude we have, the more centered we become, and the more at peace we become. Okay, so these are the first two steps. Number one is creating the intention. My only desire is to experience God every moment I am alive. Number two is we write out the gratitude of how God is in our life on a daily basis. And now the third part, and this is huge, the written action steps. We want to write out what we will do to further our experience with God every moment we're alive. So you might do the mirror exercise, whereas we stare into our eyes, into the mirror, and we actually hold that glance for 2 to 3 to 4 minutes and watch yourself melt into love with yourself. This is a way we can actually experience God. We can look into the eyes of a homeless person, look into the eyes of someone who's physically or mentally challenged, and experience God. We can adopt a pet. And if you've ever adopted a pet, I adopted a greyhound off the track. This beautiful greyhound dog. She's no longer with me. Her name was Kona. But when I adopted Kona, I swear to you, I experienced God through her loving eyes every day. She was just amazing. And maybe that's something that you do, is that you reach out to a pet, of any type of a pet that you adopt, that maybe hasn't been treated that well or needs a new home, and you bring them into your life, into your love. Because remember, God is love. So you can experience God in so many different ways. It's not just in a church. I want to make that point really, really clear. I would like you also, as an action step, to meditate on this concept every day, just for a few minutes. Just think about what would it feel like to be wrapped in the ever-loving arms of God. Maybe you create that as one of your action steps, is close your eyes, become very centered, and imagine God in whatever way you perceive God to be, the warmth of God, the strength of God, the support of God, the peacefulness of God, to be with you right now. This doesn't have to be complicated, but I will tell you this. It has to be done regularly to have a powerful effect. Maybe you're going to plant flowers and see God as they bloom, or read books like Practicing the Presence by Joel Goldsmith, or The Prayer of Jabez by Bruce Wilkinson, to go deeper into your own experience. Attending services more regularly could also really help you to experience God regularly. Volunteering anywhere, wherever you volunteer, look for the face of God. Maybe you use the words of Ram Dass, who's a great spiritual teacher, when he says, everyone is Jesus in drag. Can you imagine that? Where that you see God or you see Jesus even in those people that you don't get along with? Maybe those people are some of our greatest teachers of what it's like to be compassionate and generous and loving to others. What if the truth was that they were truly doing the best they could at the highest level they could in this world? Ponder on that. Maybe they're not just out to get you personally. It could be that they're an example for you to live a more compassionate and loving life. Another way that we can experience God regularly is through rituals. Every day I wash my face, and I'm going to take you through this because this is something that really helps me to become grounded and to think of God more often. I wash my forehead and I say, God thinks through me daily. I wash my eyes and I say, God sees through me daily. I wash my nose and I say, God smells through me daily. I wash my mouth and I say, God speaks through me daily. I wash my ears and I repeat, God hears through me daily. And then I wash my neck and I say, God acts through me daily. Just that ritual slows me down and gets me or gives me another opportunity to become more connected to God. I mentioned the blessing sheets on our website. I think writing out in gratitude what we're thankful for helps us to connect with God more deeply on a daily basis. I want to share a personal story of a way that I experienced God, one of the deepest ways I think that you could in life, and that's through an unbelievable, a miraculous, I'm going to call it a miraculous healing. Over the summertime in June, I had torn up my knee really bad running and went to my doctor and did an MRI, and we came up that there was all kinds of things wrong with it, and we had to do surgery. I was limping, and I tell people when I tell this story, I say that the pain was truly a 9 out of 10. I was limping around. It was July by the time I got to the doctor, and we couldn't get in until September. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because of all the work I do, I can't go on pain medication, so I'm just going to have to grin and bear it, I guess. And in August, I did something that I had talked about doing for probably 8 years, but never had. And that is I went on a spiritual retreat to a monastery. So I limped into the monastery, and it was the last remaining monastery in the state of Florida. It's called St. Leo's Abbey, just north of Tampa, Florida. So you could go up and spend a day there, a week there, a month. You could spend as long as you wanted to, and there were 22 monks that lived there. And I decided that since I couldn't really do much else, I'm a big exercise nut, I couldn't go into the gym and work out because my knee, I couldn't even swim. The pain was so intense, I couldn't even get in a pool. So I thought, well, since I can't do much, I might as well go and try to get closer and experience God a little bit more. So I went in, and the first day, Friday, was very difficult. Although I did have a beautiful experience sitting in the church at the monastery. Went in, sat down, and I was with a very good friend of mine, and within minutes, tears were streaming from my face, and I knew that I was in the presence of God, and I knew that this was an amazingly special environment. I turned to look at her, and this was her first chance to go to a monastery, and she had tears in her eyes, and she looks at me and she goes, I don't even know how this happened. And I smiled and said, I do. So I said, I know exactly how that happened. I said, honey, we are experiencing God. That's just how beautiful it is. So that night, we went to several of the prayer services with the 22 monks, ate dinner with them. Next day, got up early. The services were, I think it was 6 times a day. Went to the 7 a.m. service, and in the 7 a.m. service, my knee was hurting so bad, I put both of my hands on my knee, and I just said, God, I know you're really busy around the world right now. I know there's wars to stop and famines to end and all of this stuff going on, but I have to ask you, if it is within your will to take a little bit of this discomfort away, I would be so full of gratitude. And I just said, thank you very much for listening to my prayer. Amen. And with that, I stood up and sat down multiple times with the monks and went through their chants and their prayers with them, as they had encouraged us to do. After the service, we went to breakfast, and then we went to another prayer service, and then lunch and another prayer service. And it was in the afternoon when I was walking down a short flight of stairs that I noticed for the first time the discomfort was lessening. And I didn't want to say anything to anyone. Actually, on Saturday night, I was walking up and down stairs, and I know that the pain went from a 9 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10, but I really didn't want to mention anything. I was afraid I might jinx it. And the next morning, Sunday, when we went over for the first 7 a.m. service, I was going to ask some of the monks if they would sit and pray on my knee. When I went up and down the stairs, and now it was a 2 or a 3 out of 10. By Sunday late afternoon, when we walked across the street to the grotto, it was a 1, and I am just in total shock. Now, I know my knee was really torn up. My friend was looking at me saying, this is amazing, you're walking all over the place, and we walked the campus multiple times that day. And listen to this. By Monday afternoon at 4:30, I had called the surgeon and canceled the surgery. Within 2 to 3 weeks, I was back on a bike in the gymnasium, riding at a very high level of intensity. And within 2 months, I was out running again. I mean, this is the most amazing personal experience, one of the most, I'll have to say, most amazing personal experience that I ever had in my desire to experience God more regularly on a daily basis. I think it's a testament to the power of prayer, and I think it's a testament of what happens when we slow down and ask God to come into our lives in specific ways on a regular basis. I hope that you'll do the same. Now, our second intention, just like we did the first one by writing out about experiencing God, our second intention is going to be a little bit different. And we're going to write the intention out. We're going to talk about gratitude and write out the gratitude we have for our second intention. And then, of course, the action steps. So here we go. Intention number 2. My only desire is to share God every moment I am alive. So with your pen and paper, make sure you're not doing this while you're driving, but with your pen and paper, write out, my only desire is to share God every moment I am alive. So this is the intention. Well, what's the gratitude? We want to get that paper again and write out now the gratitude we have had recently for a way or the ways in which we've shared God. This is an action gratitude thought now. This is about giving someone a spiritual book or CD as a gift. That could be something that we're blessed to do. Maybe we let someone in traffic. We let them get ahead of us. I know it doesn't happen often, but it would be a way for us to share God by being compassionate for someone who needed to get in. Maybe we brought a neighbor's garbage can in from the curb. That could be something we write down that we were thinking of someone else. See, when you think of others, it's a way to share God. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? And it really is. Maybe you invited someone to join you for a service at your church. You know, the presentation that you heard at First Unity, I cannot tell you how many people came up when I was in St. Petersburg, Florida at Reverend Hayes' church and said, you know, we actually brought someone in that had no idea that you were going to speak, or we had a guest speaker coming in for the day, and we're so blessed that we reached out and asked the neighbor to come with us. They had never even experienced something like this before, and that's the way we share God, is that we ask people, hey, would you like to join me at my temple or at my church or at my synagogue, wherever you go, wherever you practice. It's a great way to share God. Amazing stories can happen when we reach out like this. Okay, so that's some of the steps of gratitude, and maybe you'll think of others in which you've shared God on a regular basis. Write them down, because when they're on paper, they have a greater impact on our life. Now, for the second intention, my only desire is to share God every moment I'm alive. We've got to get to the action steps. Again, the action steps that you'll write now will create the momentum needed as you travel the path to sharing God with yourself and others every moment you are alive. So, what will they be? We need to write them down. You may find a few of the recommendations that I gave as possible steps of gratitude could be your action steps. This could be all that you need, but let's look at some others. Giving our time to others could be a way that we share God. Listening to someone's pain without trying to give them the steps to fix it. Just listening could be a way to share God with someone else. Sharing our gifts that we have. Maybe it's helping kids that can't read or adults who can't read to read. It's a way to share our gifts. See, the action steps take us out of ourselves into the real world, and this is where we need to be to share God. Practicing meditation daily to become more centered in God's presence could be a way to share God. Praying for others. You know, there's been many, many studies that have been done showing the power of prayer. Someone doesn't even have to know that you're praying for them for you to share God and maybe to help them to heal. On our website, once again, you know, we have a prayer page, and we have people that write in saying that they've been healed, of some major diseases, relationships mended, all because they were put on a prayer page and other people came and prayed for them. So that's a way that you can share God without even telling someone. Maybe create a prayer list of people that you wake up every day and just acknowledge with your mind, and a prayer to God that they be guided to better health or finances or relationships. See, this is a way we can share God too. A really big way to share God, and this may be one of the most difficult steps, is to forgive someone who has hurt you. If we're talking about a former boss, a former lover, a former spouse, maybe a child, one of your children, they could be an adult children right now that you need to forgive, that could be an amazingly powerful way to share God. And how about forgiving yourself? You can actually share God with yourself by being a little easier and forgiving yourself for something that you did yesterday or 25 years ago. Creating the action steps of how you're going to share God is going to be huge for you as you go on your own personal path. You know, this is track 6 now. This message today, I'll start again. I know. All right, this is track 6 then. This message today is to be shared with as many people as you can. You know, it's a simple reminder. They're so true. It's a simple reminder of what we already know. But at times, we just seem to forget in our crazy and frenzied world that we live in. I hope that this CD of helping us to slow down, to experience God, and to share God every moment we are alive will really have an impact on your life. If it's just to remind you of what you already know, that's perfect. If it's to spur a new thought process of how you can slow down to experience God, I hope that that happens too. Either way, please share these thoughts with as many people as you can, because the more people that are trying to live a more awakened life, a more spiritual life, the better this world will become. I want to share 3 thoughts with you, thoughts that have been given to me that maybe will help you through this day or through a difficult time that you might be facing. There's a beautiful word called namaste. Namaste, it comes from our Eastern philosophies, stands for I salute the God in you that resides in me. It's a beautiful way to salute someone, to say good morning, to say hello, to say goodbye. Think about that word, and maybe this is a word that you meditate on. Namaste. Remember that we were truly made, each of us, in the image of our Creator. We were made in the image of our Creator. Don't ever forget that. Especially the days that you're having a really hard time, look in the mirror and remember that you are purely loved at this very moment for exactly who you are. And there's a final mantra, if you will, that I think is absolutely beautiful. And it goes like this, and many people that do meditation on a regular basis will use this type of a mantra to meditate on. It goes, Om Mani Padma Um. And it stands for, I honor the jewel in the lotus, I honor the God within. Think about that. Om Mani Padma I honor the jewel in the lotus, I honor the God within. I hope that you've had a great time. As much fun that I've had today in both the live and the tape version of this presentation. And I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. If I can assist you or your company as a professional speaker or a life, business, and relationship coach, please don't hesitate to contact me via our website, www.talkdavid.com. I'm David Essel, wishing you the most blessed of days.